Hey everyone, as promised, I'm back with another episode this week, and it's a special one. This is Peter K, aka Trendcrusher. Thanks for tuning in to the Trendcrusher podcast. In the past few years that I've been doing the podcast, I haven't really covered a lot of sludge bands, and when an opportunity to speak to a cult act like Iron Monkey came my way, I knew I had to get them on board. So I had a chance to speak to Jim from the band about their latest album, Spleen and Goad, which is out right now on Relapse Records. We spoke quite a bit, so let's dive straight into that chat. Welcome to the podcast. How's it going, Jim?
All right. Not bad. How are you?
All good. I mean, it's kind of great to speak to you, and as someone who's heard about the band over the years, it's kind of great to kind of speak to you and talk to you about your upcoming album, because we're speaking a couple of weeks before release of Spleen and Goad. So before we kind of get into the album and stuff like that, how does it feel, first of all, to be kind of doing press right now before the album? Because if you kind of look at it chronologically, this is like the second album being released after the comeback, so to say, of the band Iron Monkey. So tell me what your feelings are like, at least to start off.
What, for the press? Well, I'm seem to be doing a lot of interviews, as opposed to any other time I've done the band. So it's all good. It seems to be everything seems to be going fairly smoothly for a change.
Yeah, and that one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about, because especially since it's been 7 years since you released 913, take me through that process post the release of the album, right? Was there plans to make more music? How did you all reach from there to Spleen and Goad?
Right. Okay. So that 913 album came out at the end of 2017, and shortly after, in early 2018, we had to get a different drummer in, because our drummer moved to the other end of the country. So we got a new drummer in straight away, and we immediately started putting songs together for a new album. And the majority of the songs on this new album were written in 2018 and a little bit in 2019. So we went, the intention was to put this record out in 2019, really, as soon as we could. And it's taken us 6 years or whatever to actually kind of drop it, because we just had so many issues with the band, internally, externally. There's pretty much everything that you can think of thrown at us to kind of, thrown at this record to stop it happening. From personal tragedy to injuries and sickness and financial problems, and obviously we had the virus. They shut the planet down for a bit, didn't it? So yeah, it was massive. It was a massive problem to kind of get this record out. And there was a few times where we didn't think that was going to happen, and but we kind of treated it as a mission, and finish it at all costs, really. So we kind of persevered with it, and I'm kind of glad we had that time in between writing those songs and putting it out, because I think it's made a better record. And I think the frustration of things going wrong and all the problems that we had have kind of somehow kind of materialized in the sound of this record, really. I think you can probably hear that. So yeah, in a way, it's good that we had all those difficulties, really.
And it's interesting for you to say that, right? Because with most bands that you kind of speak to, especially in the last year and a half, or especially I think it started off with 2022, where every band was like, hey, is this your COVID record, or is this the lockdown album that you kind of made? But yours predates even that. Uh,
No, I was going to say the lockdown was the least of our problems, really. That was just one thing. That wasn't like the worst shit. That's the worst things that have happened to this band. That just kind of like stalled us for a bit. But yeah, go on, continue what you're saying.
no,
The
so I wanted to say, how do you kind of reflect looking at like generally? Because one of the things about music is it also reflects your state of mind then, right? Uh, Looking at 2017 or 18, 19 that you're talking about, looking back at that writing period, what's your relationship? How do you feel about it? I mean, cathartic would definitely be something I would consider since you talked about just all the struggles that you all had, right?
I mean, the catharsis with this was actually the relief of getting the record out. But to be honest with you, I think it's been like that between starting that record and finishing it. It was more of a burden. It wasn't an enjoyable process. I mean, this is not never been a fun band to be in anyway. It's always so we've always had kind of issues with one thing or another, and they just seem to accumulate as we go on. And so yeah, I guess the catharsis would be in the releasing the record, and then everything after that is a bonus. Really, we just needed to get that record done, which we did, and everything after that, I'm not even that particularly interested in. We completed what we set out to do. Certainly what I've set out to do, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, and originally my question was going to be how different was the process this time around compared to 913, but I'm guessing and just looking at the history of the band because I spent some time reading up on Iron Monkey itself. It's just I think one of those things that you're just kind of rolling with the punches and kind of persevering through it and kind of go through it. But how would you kind of describe just like from the recording and writing mindset that because the way I'm looking at it, and forgive me if I'm kind of splitting this kind of material of Iron Monkey as the second half of it. Considering the material that you all did with 913 and now with Spleen and Goad, how different was your mindset just kind of going into the writing and the recording, and what impact did
Um,
it have?
the process for the this album and the last album very similar, and obviously we had a completely different setup and thing going on in the 90s. It was like quite a different band, but the mindset of the last album was we kind of that band had split up. We'd split up in 1999, and the idea to put the band back together in 2016 was kind of like started off as a joke, really. It was something that me and like Steve from the first album, we just kind of discussed as like, shall we do this and just kind of do it as a joke and just put a couple of songs out and we thought that probably irritate people. It'd be quite funny, and then it's as we started writing stuff, we thought we may as well just do this properly. Let's just do it properly, and we thought we'd create a little bit of a stir with putting the band back together. A lot. We knew a lot of people weren't going to like it, and we knew a lot of people were going to like it. And we just kind of thought we'd just cause a little bit of trouble, put the band back together, and have fun with it. And but the process for this one, well, we carried on that energy from the release of the release of the last one. But the first issue we had was like we had to change the drummer, and then we had to change. Like we had to move from rehearsal room, and honestly, then it just kind of got like worse and worse. But once I'd got my mindset on doing something, regardless of sometimes it doesn't even necessarily feel worthwhile doing it. The amount of effort and time and effort you put in for a little bit of a for a record to come out. But it wasn't an enjoyable process. It was it was difficult, really difficult. And I can't, I'm not going to go into loads and loads of detail about that, but it wasn't. The mindset was a completely different one on this one. This one felt like something, that I didn't at times didn't want to do, but I made myself do it.
Okay, fair enough. And I mean, thanks for sharing as much as you did. Um, Before we kind of go on, I thought maybe before we talk more about the music, let's play a song for all those tuned in and are listening so far. Uh, what song would you say kind of exemplifies what you're describing, right? And I have my thoughts, which I want to reserve post playing the song. So, from Spleen and Goad, which song would you say kind of exemplifies the sound of the album and
Well, I
why?
would say the most, you know, the whole album sounds like an iMonkey album, but some of her different influences are coming through on different songs. I think that probably the one that would probably be the first track, Misanthropizer, is the one that we part for the first single. I guess that would be the one to play really, but people have heard that one already. So yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts? What
Oh,
I'm guessing that one or
yeah, definitely. I mean,
the second track. The second track's very recognizably us.
yeah,
We've
I think that's a good idea. So, why don't we play that one? Okay, that was Concrete Shock by Iron Monkey off their album Spleen and Goad. And I'm still talking to Jim. Now, one of the things I wanted to kind of share my thoughts on the album, and like I shared before we started recording, right? I live in Mumbai, India, which is easily one of the most densely populated cities in the world. And when I was listening to the album, so I travel by public transport here. And I, this morning before I left for work, I put on the album and I was listening to it. And there's some feeling of suffocation or like claustrophobia that you kind of feel. And it's not an easy listen. I mean, like, I have to be honest, about halfway through the album, I was like, wow, this is really not easy. Was that probably some of the intention that you had, especially just overall with the sound?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. There's a lot of those kind of emotions in this record. Like like you say, feelings of kind of suffocation, desperation, like genuine anger, mental, mental illness, like twisted, twisted logic. There's and also a little bit of arrogance. There's a touch of sardonic humor through it. So yeah, it's got kind of there's a heavy amount of negative emotion in this record, I guess.
Yeah. And I think like that's one of the things also I was reading up in your past interviews, right? And I'm just going to quote you off it where you said, uh, this isn't music for music people to get stoned to. I mean, this is
Oh,
music for people to hurl pavement slabs to plate glass windows to. And I was like, fuck, like this is actually gives you that kind of emotion of
yeah, well,
feeling, right?
yeah, well, most of this, a lot of this kind of music is. I suppose like the more kind of stoner band, it's like people like kick back and bang their head and drink a few beers and smoke some, like smoke a bong and stuff. This is not that, this is not that kind of band, go listen to something else. This is animalistic, aggressive, um, sludge, I guess. I mean, like
Yeah.
this style of music is hardcore punk and doom metal. So doom metal is, as its moniker suggests, is a sense of impending doom and like, darkness, and hardcore punk is that wild, you know, anti-authoritarian, aggression. So it's not a chill out, it's not chill out music. It's not your stoner rock to sit back, and smoke weed to. Although you can if you want, but you might regret it.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, like, I was just trying to imagine a live show, right? And I was at a live show a couple of nights ago. It also is one of those things where, I mean, and I don't know if you've seen this, but for me, I haven't attended too many hardcore shows abroad. And there's a YouTube channel called Hate 56 that kind of shares a spotlight on a lot of like bands in the UK, US, and stuff like that. And when I see just like the circle pits and people losing their shit, like I was like, fuck, imagine what an Iron Monkey concert is like. I don't think it ends well for anybody, right?
Well, I mean, the kind of hardcore that we were influenced by is the 80s, the start of the 80s hardcore, movement. And those bands were like not, well produced, were
Yeah.
raw, had that, realness about them. They weren't, like well made records, particularly, but they capture that kind of raw energy, short, fast aggression. And like I say, the doom metal's kind of almost like the flip side of that, and we kind of meet in the middle somewhere. And certainly when during the '90s era, um, we played shows. I mean, we were all from the hardcore scene originally, anyway, and I always consider us like hardcore punks playing metal, I guess. But certainly like we brought two crowds together, I guess, at a lot of our shows. Some of the like people into the more doom end of things, and our shows in the '90s were really chaotic and sometimes quite violent. And you know, we got banned from quite a few places. There's a few times the police showed up, and we had a court case. So yeah, during that period of the ban, our live shows were pretty wild, and I put that a lot of that down to Johnny. Rest in peace. He was a wild frontman. You didn't want to be anywhere near him when we were performing. He was, and again, he's another hardcore dude playing this down tuned Sabbathy, punk rock. So yeah, we had the '90s were pretty wild for in the live sense.
Okay, and I don't mean to pry, but I'm just curious going back to like the initial part of our conversation where you were talking just about how tough it was to kind of put together Spleen and Goad and record it. And especially since you talked about even like with 913, the motivation being partly that, there was, and when I was reading up on it, there was kind of like a split response, right? Where a lot of people were like, how could they kind of put the band together? But a lot of them were like, holy shit, like this is kind of like this cult band coming forward. Uh, was
Yeah.
that weighing on y'all, or did that have any part to play when y'all kind of put
Well, we knew.
together Spleen and Goad?
Well, we knew. Well, me and Steve discussed that. This we knew that that was going to happen anyway, and like we, that's part of the intention of the band anyway. I guess, you know, we did want to provoke people, and we
Hmm.
did expect backlash, and that was kind of, I find that kind of like feeds into the band quite well. We're quite, I guess, quite a provocative band in the '90s for various different reasons. So there's always been that in the, that mindset has always been there with the band, and yeah, I mean, when we put the band together, we knew we were going to piss lots of people off, and you know, the title of this new record, Spleen and Goad, is a nod to that. Spleen being a shortening of a phrase to vent spleen, which means to express anger, and goad meaning to provoke, irritate, and prod and poke a response. So that mindset's always been there with the band. We're always going to upset people in one way or another, and we're not particularly bothered how that affects the band. We're not in it to be a popular band. We don't really care about that. We don't. We don't. Everything outside of the band is like not as important. How well received we are. We're not trying to be. We're not trying to please people. Quite the opposite, actually.
No, it's quite interesting, right? Because like there is this duality to most metalheads. Uh, One aspect is that you have a certain kind of brotherhood, have a certain sense of community in there. Because, like, at some point when I look at it, it's this kind of aggressive music that you kind of bond over and realize that not everyone listens to. But at the same time, the same community can also be quite gatekeeping, right? They want only certain people, certain kind of people, and kind of filter that out. But they're also outspoken about it. I mean, like the
Well,
biggest example.
yeah, that's because of the internet, because people can be outspoken about it, and like, so you expect that. But I'm a bigger gatekeeper than all these gatekeepers put together. And I've been in the band and writing the music from day one. So I'm going to do what I want to do, regardless of what anybody's opinions are. And like I look at, I don't spend much time, but looking at what people say. But I get the gist of it. Most of it's good, but there's some of it's negative, but good. I'm glad. I'm glad that people don't like it. That makes it, that's interesting. It's not boring, it makes it less boring. It's not just about the music, although that's central.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, right? Because like when you think about life in general, you can't always like please everyone or can't make everyone happy. And I think,
No, and I think people try to do that as well, and I think you just need to do your own thing and like not give a shit what anybody thinks. Why you can't like live your life worried about what people think you want you to think about it. I mean, I don't care. I really, it just amuses me, but I don't take it anything. I don't take any of that stuff seriously. It's we'll do this regardless of whether anybody likes it. But we're doing it for us. That's the main reason we're doing it.
and if you think about it, that's essentially what being metal is all about, right? It's about being true to yourself and not kind of like conforming to it. So I find that also the hypocrisy of that kind of very strange, right? Couple of things I want to do because I'm just being mindful of time also while we chat. You talked about 90s hardcore and kind of being rooted in that with your sound.
Well,
Uh,
so the eight, well, I'd say the 80s
Sorry.
hardcore.
Yeah, sorry.
First wave of hardcore, yeah.
Yeah. Do you kind of listen to any current music or what do you normally kind of listen to at the point,
I
or is
listen
it?
to a very wide range of music. A lot of what I listen to doesn't even have guitars in it, but and I do like dip in fairly regularly and check out new bands and stuff. But I guess a lot of bands that are playing the stuff that we do, I find it really kind of say, so it's a lot of it's regurgitated stuff. I get, when we started doing this style of music, there wasn't that many bands doing it, so every band kind of sounded slightly different. But it's the same with anything else. As there's such a glut of music. There's so many bands doing, and you've got to really kind of like take some time to pick the good stuff out. But I listen to everything, as much as many different styles of music as possible, because I'd be bored listening to metal or punk all day long. I don't want to do that. I'm a human being at the end of the day, and you want a different emotional content in your music. Depending on what you feel like. I guess. So yeah, I listen to all kinds of things, and sometimes the most extreme and heavy stuff doesn't even have guitars. I listen to a lot of kind of power electronic, death industrial, noise kind of music that is electronic.
Yeah.
It doesn't like metal is not the be all and end all or of like heaviness. And also like I'm always checking out old bands as well. Stuff that I might have missed. Checking out like obscure 70s prog rock bands and just anything. And I'll listen to anything. And I'm always like checking. I'm always on listening for something unique as well. That's important. I think when you're younger, you want to listen to the same thing over and over again because you want to be attached to a scene, don't you? And you want to you're getting yourself involved in a scene and you listen to all those bands. But I'm 50 years old. I don't listen to metal all day.
True. I guess that makes sense. And it's important also, right? I mean, like at some point you just get saturated and like I bash on a few genres or subgenres of metal because they just end up all bands kind of sounding the same in there and it just sounds repetitive. Uh, but I must ask, I mean, I know you all did a few shows post the release of 913. Do you have anything planned at the moment that you can talk about or anything that the listeners should keep their eye out for?
Yeah, I mean, we're like discussing kind of playing shows at some point. We've got a band member in Canada at the moment, so we've got to work out the logistics of doing that, and we're going to be quite selective with that. That's with the live thing, and with as far as the band comes, the output record wise, I'm always writing stuff, so there will be hopefully another record. In a shorter gap, than the last one. Hopefully things will go a bit smoother this time. Yeah.
Nah, I mean, I hope so too. And just kind of looking at the history of the band, right? I mean, it's just interesting just seeing the trajectory. But I'm glad, in 2024, there is a new Iron Monkey album and we got a chance to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So, any final words? Anything else you want to leave for our listeners?
No, I think I've said enough. Yeah, there's nothing I particularly want to add. You go out, you go and check the record out and support it. If that's your thing. If it's not, well, don't.
And I think that's a great note to end our chat. Thanks so much for taking time out and speaking to me, Jim.
No problem. All right, take care. Thanks for the questions.
And that was Jim Rushby from Iron Monkey. Do check out their album Spleen and Goad. It's out right now via Relapse Records. I'm going to leave the link in the show notes as always. Do let me know what you think of the album and let me know who you'd like me to get on the podcast for future episodes. If you're a band or a label listening in and you'd like me to feature some of your artists or your band, get in touch, trendcrusher@gmail.com. But that's all I've got for this episode. I'll see you all very soon. Cheers.